welcome to Rauta and going through my record collection part I. Now, it's not a big pile, let's be honest with it, and I guess a lot of people know what to expect from letter I when it comes to me, knowing at least a little bit of my musical taste. So I'll show you the pile because like I said it won't be big, and then I will go quickly through it explaining why I have this certain amount of albums. So not that much. Letter I isn't exactly the letter with the bands, having so many names. But I mean, of course, there are few, and I guess some of them are more self-explanatory than the others. Now it seems these are not exactly all in alphabetical order, so let's make some adjustments. I was guessing these would be, well, maybe they are indeed. Maybe this is just putting me in a, no, there are some mistakes here. Alright, so I'll figure it out on the go, because it doesn't really matter if I'm showing these in alphabetical order or in the order they are in my pile. So maybe we could just go by, how it goes. So let's start with the most obvious one. I think this is the most obvious when it comes to me, and it's of course Immortal. Back in the days, of course, this band was in Finland known as Immortal. The very, very Finnish pronunciation for the fact. Now, you only see 4 albums. I don't think there are many. I don't think there are more in my pile. And now you're wondering why these particular albums. I'm guessing this because I would be questioning my choice of Immortal albums. Anyway, obviously, this was the band that got me hooked into black metal. One of the very, very, very firsts. I'm saying that because I'm not sure which one was the very first black metal band, but if I had to put my money on a bet, which one was the very first black metal I owned, most likely it would be Pure Holocaust. It was one of the very few ones that I started with, and there was this silly story I'm gonna now share with you. Back in the days, obviously we did a lot of, copying tapes, CDs on tapes or tapes on tapes, basically tape trading idea, but nothing to do with trading in this case. So I had this album from a dude at school. He would, wear spikes and studs, similar to these ones, and I got this Pure Holocaust from him, I was basically getting his copy, borrowing it. And then, I was supposed to copy on tape and shit. And then something happened in my backpack. A bottle of homemade wine would just leak some of that liquid into the bag. And soon I found out that in my bag, having that Immortal album, the album was damaged. So the booklet was soaked. Now, then I wonder, I don't really know why this particular copy isn't that one, because I am pretty sure I had this idea that obviously I will buy him a new one and take the soaked copy. But like I said, this isn't, as you can see, this isn't the one that is like all weird shit. So maybe I returned it. I don't remember that part of the details, but either way, obviously, over the years, as soon as I had it on tape and I figured out this is the kind of stuff I really like, I had to buy a copy. So obviously these 2 early Immortal albums are in my pile because I consider these the best. Never got to like Diabolical, Full Moon, Mysticism that much. I mean, over the years I started liking a little bit more than in the beginning, but never made it to my shelf. I just didn't like it as much. I did have Blizzard Beast. I did have At the Heart of Winter in my copy, and my collection that is. But somehow, I kind of got bored with both of these albums. And after At the Heart of Winter, I felt Immortal went a little bit on decline. But this is more explained in my Norwegian black metal classics. However, later on, I really liked Northern Chaos God. So probably came to me as a review copy back in the day, and I decided to keep it, as well as this one made by Demonas, not a Bath in the band anymore. So it's kind of weird that I like the very early Immortal ones and then those later ones, but in between, not so much. But even this band is surpassed by the amount of releases I have in my collection by another Norwegian black metal band, much more underground, however, and that is Eldion. Now, I don't have Eldion's ambient albums because I don't really like them that much. They're okay, but nothing beyond that. But when it comes to Forest Poetry, self-titled, or my favorite, this compilation, the Trusen, the Nordriket, or Eldion Nidhogg split for that matter, or these weird, considered weird because it doesn't have the jewel case, the slip case, Northern Wisdom, Nocturnal Wisdom, and Nocturnal Visions, yeah, and of course Strength and Anger. This rawer end of Norwegian black metal has resonated me from the very beginning when I heard it. Obviously, it was a few years later than figuring out bands like Immortal, Marduk, whatever I had back in the mid-90s. This was more in the late 90s. And it was kind of a mind-blowing how raw, how primitive, and yet aggressive it was. It was like Dark Throne, but raw and simplistic, almost like punkish. But it resonated with me. Why? I don't truly know. It's something like hypnotic, barbaric and all. So, yeah. Lots of Eldion in my shelf still to this day. Even though musically it doesn't really, get to the levels of a lot of later on or even preceding black metal ones. Not to mention death metal, thrash metal, which are more technical, more honed and all that stuff. But maybe that's the counterbalance thing. Then there's some individual releases by a variety of bands like Impaled, the American carcass worship band, or how they started, Mundo Medicale. I had some other Impaled releases in my collection previously, but I don't know. Didn't resonate with me that much. And then again, of course, there are plenty of Impaled albums I haven't been listening to, which I might like. Now wondering where are my Impaled Nazarene lands. Well, Impaled Nazarene is a band that I kind of liked a lot in the mid-90s, later 90s. But somehow I kind of got, not bored, but I'm very picky what I put in my collection. So while I did like a lot, albums like Suomi Finland Perkele, and later on, of course, albums like Ugra Karma, or Nords, or albums like Nihil, which I think it's one of the best, maybe the best Impaled Nazarene albums. I don't know. When I was listening to it, was it a year or two ago for this Finnish black metal series, I figured out I like them more as a live band. Impaled Nazarene is, in my opinion, very, very fierce, very aggressive, very intense live band. When it comes to albums, I don't know. I never get the feeling I really need to listen to Impaled Nazarene. So here I'm justifying why I don't have them, because obvious question would be, after Impaled, where is your Impaled Nazarene collection? Or like we would say in Finland, Impaled Nazarene. But anyway, like I said, good live band, on album bands, just decent. Another band I don't really like that much on albums, but, live, very intense and all, is Inade from Singapore. Something that I just recently interviewed back in the days, back in the last Steelfest. And this is, in my the best album of the past. I have replaced the original copy with this reissue, Skull Fucking Armageddon, because I like digipacks. There's no other reason for me to replace older albums. Then again, I never cared so much for first pressings or so on. I have even upgraded certain first pressings or early pressings with, just like, hey, buy me a beer, you get the more expensive copy and I get the newer one, because I don't really care that much. Losing money with it? Yeah, so what? Eldion, Swedish black metal band, which I really like the debut album. The second album is pretty cool too, but nothing beats the first album, so this is the only album by the very band in my collection. Then there are some non-metallic ones, and I think this could be the best by letter I in my collection, and it's called Inade. Inade in Finnish, that is. Or maybe we should call it Inade. This is dark ambient. I only have three albums, and I don't honestly know why. But I know, but I don't know why I didn't listen to them back in the days more than that. And my by far the most listened Inade album is the Crackling of the Anonymous. Superb, dark ambient. It gets very dark, very haunting, and at some points very industrial-like. It's almost like machines making killer robots on a planet in a factory that is ready to, exterminate all life from the galaxy. That's how my mind kind of interprets this music. I'm saying this because Inade's music is just beautiful, dark ambient, a lot darker than most metal ever will be. So yeah, and I've been obviously listening to more than that just those three, but for some reason I have been very, very lazy buying albums, past few years. And talking of soundtracks, which I always have here and there, is Inception, Hans Zimmer compiled music, directed music, written. Great soundtrack still. A great movie too, but the soundtrack is even better. Some others I will show you. Impaled is one of those modern thrash metal bands, which is definitely doing things the right way. Basically the least known band in my collection of because nobody seems to talk about it. When I got this review copy, I was like, wow, this is really good. So it's still in my collection. Then there are some individual ones like Inferia. And not Inferia, Inferi. Inferia is a Swedish porn grind band. Inferi there's one of less known black metal side projects. Good Finnish black metal if you like Finnish black metal to begin with. And of course, one of the better eyes in the collection, Inquisition. I never was too much of a fan of the early Inquisition material, which is something I guess we discussed in my Inquisition interview a couple of years ago. But I mean, they really evolved into something more interesting in terms of songwriting and, making more captivating material. The early ones were like, just quite okay. I saw them live even back in the days. Must be late 90s or very early 2000s. Back in the days when they had like maybe 2 albums out. But later on, I think Inquisition really stepped up, started making so much better music. So what was just decent became great later on, and that's the reason why I have 4 of them. So I'm more of a fan of the later era than the early ones, and probably missing a couple of key albums, which I should have. But like I said, being lazy, buying albums, I just add into my want list, and eventually I some days just go on and update it. But I also keep removing albums from my collection, if you're wondering why there are no many. I try to keep the so-called low-fat fat percentage, when it comes to my record collection. I want to be so that I'm gonna go blindly and this album, oh great, I haven't been listening to this for a while, which is a good excuse to use this as the last one in the letter I, Isengard, Höstmörke. Look at this cute Fenris boy when he was barely a teenager, or maybe very early 20s. I had obviously Vinterskugge in my collection. Actually, I have had a couple of copies of it, but at this point, before making this video, when I was going through the letter I figured out Isengard, 1 album is enough. The third one, which some people don't even consider Isengard, seems to be just leftover scrapings and nothing to do with the 2 first ones. But then again, let's be honest about it, the first one is a demo compilation. There are some iconic tracks like Vinterskugge itself, or songs like Storm of Evil, which were the main reasons why I had to have the CD in my collection for decades. But now I finally figured out, do I really need this demo compilation for a couple of tracks? Yeah, there are more good tracks than those 2, but those 2 are the very iconic, some of the best tracks, Isengard ever made. But Höstmörke is the album why I really love the band. And this was, by the way, one of the very, very early ones from the mid-90s I got. And I actually remember originally liking the 5 first songs, which are not black metal songs at all, but these folk metal songs in a way, because they're like clean vocals and, Fenris doing clean vocals, and I really liked them. But this was before I could actually enjoy, raspy, screamy black metal vocals. So I didn't even like these 2 last parts. But like I said, this was before I got into black metal. So we're talking about very, very early to mid-90s. Then when it eventually clicked, I started liking these 2 black metal songs a lot. So much that they even challenged the Darkthrone's golden era. This was a very, very short amount of time, and in hindsight it feels almost ridiculous when I was thinking like that, because I was obviously, enjoying clean vocals, I was enjoying thrash metal vocals, I was enjoying death metal growls, and so on and so on. But something clicked me the wrong way with, black metal vocals, even though I was very much into anti-Christianity. So theme-wise, black metal, fucking yeah. Riff-wise, totally but the vocals, oh man, they are not growling. So coming from this death thrash guy to black metal guy, it was kind of a big step to take before I could really enjoy the full package. And when I started to like it, now, well, 30 plus years later, here we are. So Höstmörke is a key album when it comes to me enjoying black metal. So we're talking about roughly 94 maybe. And that's how it is. So from 1994 to 1995 or whatever the time was, maybe it started actually 1993. I'm not sure, because that's when I heard Bathory for the first time, and I wasn't sure what to think of it about the black metal vocals once again. Anyway, Höstmörke is a very, very special album in that respect for me, because, like I said, it was this bridge from other kind of metal to black metal, and musically especially. Like I said, thematically I was all set in, but the vocal parts were just setting me apart from that stuff. So it took some time for me to figure out this is the kind of stuff. So obviously, whenever I hear Eisenard, there's a little bit of nostalgia in the mix, and I'm really a nostalgic person. So, letter I, quite small, became lengthier video as I thought, because going for the memory lane, well, you get the stories, you get the ideas, explaining why I do have this and that. And before we go on and call it a day with this video, I'm going to mention some story about Immortal. Is that when I went to Bergen in Norway a couple of years ago for the first time, it was very, very iconic trip in a way, because we went to the very same monastery ruins in nearby Bergen, where the first Immortal video back in 1992 or whatever was filmed. So it was very, very nice to get into the very spot some 30 years later. And now I've been there two times, and you've seen it in my talk interview. You will see it in my old funeral interview when it comes out. So it was kind of nice to go into the very place that was also one of my very first connections to Immortal. I mean, when I heard Pure Holocaust, I had no idea of that music video existing. And later on, you know, when I saw it, I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of a goofy with the funny hats and, you know, guys looking like these kind of movements. But there it is. And obviously should see that Immortal, you know, music video, because it's kind of a goofy, but that's how early 90s were, especially when it comes to music videos and nobody having a clue what to be professional in a world where it's just marginal music was. But that's another story for another time and all that stuff. Now we will move to letter J, and you can already start guessing which bands I might have letter J. It's gonna be smaller pile than letter I think, but we'll have some really good albums right there too. So let's move on and see you with the letter J, presenting some of the albums I have from that letter. Now off you go see some reviews, go see some interviews, go listen to metal.